Oh, Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Now, Kurt's convinced that Robert De Niro's on some kind of Epstein list or some kind of thing like that, and then he's afraid that if Trump does get power, he's going to expose him, and he is actually going to come at him.
Of course Kurt thinks that.
That's what Kurt thinks that.
Kurt thinks that about everything that happens in the world.
I think that Robert De Niro's just got Trump derangement syndrome.
I think he's old, too. There's a thing about old men.
And
they want to yell at everybody.
And he's completely... Did you see when he went and gave that speech outside of the trial? That was bizarre.
Who told him that was a good idea?
And then
Robert De Niro has always portrayed the strong guy on TV, but it turns out that Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly wasn't buying the Hollywood ploy. One is a media sniper, the other is a podcast bulldog, and the two of them combined to make De Niro's political tirade into a disastrous movie. Reagan was pointing out the hypocrisy. This roast is deserving of an award since Megyn is removing the celebrity armor, and De Niro is now less godfather and more grouchy grandfather live on air.
The garbage outside today. Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. If you're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial, make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left, and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement.
The man who once transformed the mafia into an Oscar-winning career, Robert De Niro, is now acting as though he is the official spokesperson for aneurysms caused by political fury. His most prominent part lately isn't on screen. Rather, it's become a walking, shouting man. You would assume he was cast as the irate New Yorker in a real-life Scorsese film, stomping through Manhattan in orthopedic shoes and yelling at buildings. PSA on how to become a caricature of yourself as you age.
Regular people. He's like, fuck you, you're a gangster. Go fuck you.
Like, it's crazy that that's the guy from Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
You know what also I think? I think those guys have no friends. I think the only friends they have are Hollywood phonies. And so you're in this weird world where everybody you talk to is a phony, and you become a phony, and everyone's a phony, and your grasp on reality is very slippery, and your eyes are going.
Now comes Joe Rogan, a man who can go from talking about elk meat to quickly destroying the egos of celebrities. Roger didn't hold back and didn't even stop to consider whether De Niro might have a point. After all, seeing De Niro become angry about politics is like watching someone debate violently with a toaster. It's needless, dramatic, and ends with a burned toast and regret.
People's text messages, the fucking text on their phone is like as big as my hand.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so your vision of the world is blurring, literally and figuratively, and then you're getting old, and when old people are tired and cranky, they just want everyone to listen to them, and they don't have time to have a calm conversation, and you state out your opinion, I'll state my opinion, let's see where we have common ground. Get off my lawn! And that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. He's being this old grumpy man that is so lost that he thinks it's a good idea to stand in front of a bunch of people on the street and give a speech on camera about how bad Donald Trump.
Ronald's strategy was more of an open field tackle than a takedown, and De Niro had been Rogan rumbled in like a bulldozer on ayahuasca, declaring, "What is this guy even doing?" as he marched around like an elderly gladiator, slinging verbal swords at everyone to the right. As a taxidermy cliche, that is a rhetorical move intended to affix De Niro to the cultural dartboard.
Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number one of Trump derangement syndrome. He's one of those, I'm moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go. And in the not too distant future, even if Trump says he shouldn't have to. But in any event, he didn't do that the last time, Paul. Can you really picture a scenario in which Trump is more determined to hold on to power than he was at the last time in 2020, going into 2021? And what did he do ultimately?
Yet, instead of stopping at the surface, Rogan dissected De Niro as if dissecting a conspiracy idea involving dolphins supported by the CIA and ancient aliens. The notion of Dyro's perpetual political outburst simply didn't make sense to him. And to be honest, it doesn't make sense to anyone other than perhaps 3 elderly editors at The New Yorker and Marlon Brando's ghost slowly applauding in the hereafter.
Why is he talking about this? Why is he talking about this publicly?
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
If you're going to come out and say that you have a really deep-seated hatred for one of the 2 people running for president, you can't just be, he's a bully, he's a piece of shit, I hate him.
He's an idiot. Colin Powell said it best. He's a national disaster. He's an embarrassment to this country. It makes me so angry that this country has gotten to this point, that this fool, this bozo, has wound up where he has.
You probably, if you're going to express yourself about it and alienate 50% of the country, which it seems like it is, you're going to have to do better than that. You should have some specific things. Like he did some real estate deals with people in New York. Let me tell you what he did to people over.
I would love to hear it.
He did this and that. Let me tell you what he did that was fraud. He did.
Darrow, of course, didn't respond. He was probably too busy starring in yet another film where he grumbles through 3 acts as a weathered old man, only to end with a gravel-throated monologue so mumbly it should come with subtitles. But Joe Rogan wasn't here for subtlety. He came in hot, pointing out the absurdity of Dyro, once the king of brooding silence, now ranting louder than a conspiracy theorist on ayahuasca at Burning Man. Then came Megyn Kelly, and unlike Rogan, who rolled in like a gym bro with a Yaha podcast, Kelly arrived armed, stilettos sharp, facts sharper. She didn't just critique Dyro's public meltdowns, she filleted them. This is what happens when actors forget the difference between a teleprompter and a podium, she snapped. While Rogan treated Darrow's spiral like comic relief, like he'd stumbled onto a UFC stage looking for method acting inspiration, Kelly went for the jugular. She deconstructed his evolution from screen icon to political foghorn with clinical precision. To her, this wasn't just a fall from grace. It was a cautionary tale soaked in irony, a once great actor now parodying himself. And the worst part? It didn't have to be this way.
Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in confront right now, as all of the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep filmmaking, American filmmaking, in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions. He has cut funding and support to the arts, humanities, and education. And now he has announced a 100% tariff on films produced outside the U.S. Let that sink in for a minute.
She didn't even need to raise her voice. That's the brilliance of Megyn Kelly. When she goes in, it's not a shout fest, it's a dissection. And Darrow, he was splayed across her commentary table like a cautionary tale in celebrity activism. Gone wrong. One slight head tilt, one raised eyebrow, and his entire political persona collapsed like a paper straw in a hurricane. Let's be fair, Kelly wasn't dragging his acting. She knows the classics. We all do. Taxi Driver, iconic, Raging Bull, Cinematic Thunder, Meet the Parents, still quoted by every uncle at every awkward family dinner. But this wasn't about no film. It was about a man who once whispered, "You talking to me?" Now bellowing, "Listen to me," at anyone who didn't vote the way he did. And that's where Kelly struck hardest, the pivot from legendary actor to full-time political. Foghorn wasn't just clumsy, it was ridiculous. With the precision of a hawk eyeing a disoriented mouse, she laid it bare. Darrow had somehow convinced himself that ranting into microphones was his new noble calling. She compared his transformation to someone waking up, slipping into a bathrobe, and declaring themselves mayor of moral outrage. And the saddest part? No one's running against him. Because why would they? Darrow is out there, battling imaginary enemies, one raspy, rambling press conference at a time.
Robert De Niro, there's something about being a star where you think your opinion's more important than anybody else's, and you can go give a press conference. And he obviously has been very vocal from 2016 that he hates Trump for whatever reason. Maybe they have some personal thing.
You think Trump ever threw a punch himself or took one? This guy who ran and hid in the White House bunker when there were protesters outside? No way.
Now he's like holding press conferences. Now everyone's heckling him everywhere he goes.
That's so bad.
Like instead of just being this cranky old liberal. Now you're this guy that is yelling at other people that are Trump supporters, and they're yelling at you. Like, you've opened yourself up to this
Meanwhile, Joe Rogan is still sitting in his studio, probably wondering if Darrow even has a PR team, or if he's just freelancing chaos at this point. Sure, Rogan roasted him, but underneath the sarcasm was genuine confusion. How does someone that talented, that iconic, spend his golden years yelling at clouds like a cartoon grandpa with a megaphone and an axe to grind? And here's the kicker, it wasn't even partisan. Rogan didn't come at Darrow with a conservative sledgehammer. He came at him with millennial-level disbelief. Like, why is Robert Darrow yelling? Why is he suddenly everywhere? Who gave him a mic? And more importantly, why didn't they also hand him a chill pill? It's like watching a beautifully restored classic car spin aimlessly in the driveway. You respect the build, but the performance? Pure cringe. Both Rogan and Kelly made it painfully clear, Darrow isn't evolving. He's unraveling. He's become a parody of himself, and not a single soul in Hollywood seems willing to pull him aside and say, "Bobby, buddy." Maybe skip the televised tirade today, and imagine, just for fun, a world where Darrow actually paused long enough to watch either of them dismantle his new role as the red-faced mascot of elite outrage. He might have tried to look offended, which would be adorable coming from the same man who's turned every cable news cameo into a personal rage therapy session.
De Niro doesn't want to play someone truly evil, you see. At least not a certain someone. Maybe Jimmy was a Democrat. By the way, De Niro is also very upset that Donald Trump is an alleged racist. Wonder if he pulled Jimmy Kimmel aside last night and asked him to atone for his blackface-loving past.
Rogan probably would have handed Darrow a protein bar and told him to take a deep breath. Megyn Kelly? She would have just smiled, nodded, and gone right back to dissecting his relevance like it was a badly written op-ed from 2007. And here's where it gets delicious. Neither of them had to do much to shatter the image Darrow's been desperately clinging to. Because by now, his public persona is less living legend and more balloon full of hot air and dusty awards. One poke from anyone with a working sense of irony, and pop, there goes the myth, floating off into the sky of self-importance. Rogan, with every raised eyebrow and confused chuckle, asked the question everyone else is thinking. Is this really the hill Darrow wants to die on? Wearing a wrinkled suit, shouting into microphones, and pulling facial expressions that scream, "I've had too much prosciutto and now I'm mad at the world." And Megyn? She doesn't just ask the question, she writes the eulogy. She frames Darrow's downfall as not just predictable, but almost poetic. The man who once delivered cinematic gold in hushed tones is now ranting like he forgot the plot. Halfway through his sentence, it's tragicomic, a legend aging out of relevance, refusing to fade quietly into the retirement lounge of Hollywood lore. Rogan and Kelly didn't team up, didn't plan some takedown, didn't high-five through satellite feeds. They didn't have to. Darrow's unraveling was already such a public spectacle, you could practically hear the popcorn popping as they took turns roasting his meltdown.
You didn't think this through. Like, this is, and he's getting yelled at. He's doing an outside press conference. Like, Robert, you're 80 years old. Don't ruin this thing. You've had this life where you were a fucking raging bull. You know, you were in The Godfather. Like, stop doing this. Man. Don't do this.
But here's the final cherry on this Sunday of celebrity combustion. Neither Rogan nor Kelly actually wants Darrow to stop. Oh no, that would ruin the spectacle. Watching a man with more Oscars than coherent talking points descend into a permanent grumpy grandpa routine is its own form of entertainment. Not good entertainment, more like a viral clip of a raccoon trying to steal a watermelon. Chaotic, sad, and weirdly impossible to look away from. Rogan, somewhere between a DMT trip and a UFC weigh-in, seemed to genuinely pity Darrow. The same kind of pity you feel for someone still trying to send a fax in 2025. And Kelly, she practically offered to mail him a retirement brochure, complete, with a Palm Springs address, a deck chair, and a crossword puzzle. Anything to keep him from hijacking public discourse like a political foghorn with arthritis. It's not even Darrow's politics that were the issue. It's that he's become pure performance. He doesn't share opinions, he shouts them. Like he's auditioning for the role of angry man who forgot the script. Ironically, it may be his most honest role in years. So, here's the final act. Joe Rogan stripped away the mystique. He mocked the absurdity, laughed at the unraveling, Megyn Kelly, on the other hand, performed a verbal autopsy, dissecting the ego, exposing the decay, and framing the whole debacle like a Shakespearean tragedy. If, of course, Shakespeare had worked in cable news.
People shouting him down like, your movies suck. That's not true.
No, his movies are very good.
Suck. He's one of the greatest actors. I mean, he's the heir apparent to Brando, blah, blah, blah. But he's a loon.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to just say what he is. Basically, I describe this to people. You know what's happening now? Because people are aware about concussions and the problems with CTE. When you get hit and you get a dinger in football, they put you in the blue tent, in the sideline.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen to Democrats. They need to go in the blue tent for a little bit, kind of, get your eyes checked and then come out and be rational again.
Yeah, cool off
and
a
De
little.
Niro needs to go in the blue tent. I mean, because it's not calming things down. We need to be
Robert De Niro, once a towering icon of cinematic strength and mystique, isn't being parodied by late-night comedians. He's being dismantled by commentators. His harshest critic isn't a director shouting "cut," but Joe Rogan muttering, "What the hell is he doing?" And Megyn Kelly? She's calmly narrating the end of an era, one razor-sharp takedown at a time. De Niro didn't need to respond. His silence said more than any clumsy rebuttal ever could. Rogan moved on to Bigfoot theories. Kelly moved on to her next celebrity dissection. And De Niro? He probably shouted at a bird and called it a political statement. Rogan and Kelly simply held up a mirror. A big, sarcastic, unfiltered mirror, and De Niro didn't like what was staring back. Not that he paused his shouting spree long enough to notice. And just when you think his late career meltdown couldn't spiral any further, De Niro keeps barreling forward, crashing into every camera lens and patriotic soundbite in sight. This wasn't just mockery for sport. Rogan and Kelly delivered a masterclass in public unraveling. De Niro has transitioned from method acting to method yelling, and the result is a performance so chaotic, so wildly unscripted, it requires subtitles, and maybe a wellness check.
Niro Project needs friends as research.
Looking for cast, I don't know.
What De Niro projects are even around? I mean, well, De Niro's probably trying to figure out where all his money's going because he's getting divorced right now, so he's probably he's getting divorced.
Rogan, with all the subtlety of a kettlebell to the skull, exposed just how far De Niro has fallen, from stoic icon to full-blown political gremlin. Meanwhile, Kelly handed out intellectual eviction notices like party favors, clearing out what little credibility he had left, like she was staging a spiritual cleanse in a house full of broken awards and outdated rants. And the audience? Delighted, horrified, but mostly entertained. There's something undeniably satisfying about watching a once untouchable elite implode under the weight of their own self-importance. De Niro thinks he's raging against the machine, but the real machine, public opinion, is busy replaying his humiliation on loop. Because sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't powerful, it's just loud. And sometimes that echo comes back with a Rogan chuckle and a perfectly timed Kelly smirk.